Good afternoon. I am Ginetta Candelario, editor of Meridians, Feminism, Race, Transnationalism, and it is my extreme pleasure to welcome you to Meridian's 20th anniversary celebration. We are broadcasting today from Meridian's offices at Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts, which we recognize stands on Nonotuck land. We also acknowledge our neighboring Indigenous nations, the Nipmuc and Wampanoag to the east, the Mohegan and the Pequot to the south, the Mohican to the west, and the Abenaki to the north. Although Meridians has published some seminal work by Indigenous scholars and about Indigenous feminisms, we can and will do more. A first step in that direction is a special issue on global Indigenous feminisms forthcoming in fall of 2022, which I hope will lend what poet Bonaro Overstreet has aptly called our stubborn ounces of weight to the side of Indigenous decolonization and sovereignty projects, both here in the United States and globally. I am so pleased that you are joining us for our 20th anniversary celebration. I have dreamt of this moment since 2018, at which time I anticipated an event taking place in person on Smith campus in the fall of 2020, the actual 20th anniversary of our first issue's publication. Unfortunately, as you well know, two things coincided to make fall 2020 celebration in person impossible. On Friday, March 13th, Smith College closed its campus, sending all faculty, staff, and students, including our interns, home due to the global COVID-19 pandemic. And coincidentally, Meridian's editorial assistant at the time was leaving to join another journal staff in Houston, Texas at Rice University. In the blink of an eye, I found myself working from my home office and without any staff whatsoever. To make matters worse, the hallmark of the 20th anniversary was supposed to be a special third issue of Volume 19, featuring the best of Meridians, a project I had been working on for over a year to realize, but which had just begun to take shape that spring. Given the uncertainty around whether or even when the campus would reopen, the lack of support staff, and the terms of our contract with Duke University Press, I decided to focus my energies on moving forward production of the 20th anniversary reader rather than on event planning. By June of that year, I finalized the reader's table of contents and sent the issue to production to Erica Woods at Duke University's Press Production Unit, whose support during this extraordinary time was invaluable. Thank you, Erica. At the same time, Smith College's Praxis internship program was adjusted to allow recently graduated students to undertake an internship for the first time in its history. This innovation to the program allowed me to hire Tet Thadar Ang, one of our former Quigley Fellows, who worked with me from June to July that summer, and subsequently rising senior Katarina Ewan, who was a second Praxis intern and worked with us from July to August. With their help, I was able to move production along and to onboard a new group of academic year interns, 3 Quigley Fellows and a Stride Fellow, all of whom you will have an opportunity to meet on Saturday during our lunch hour. These 3 student interns began working with me in September. And finally, I was able to conduct a search for a new editorial assistant, which resulted in Megan Baptiste's hiring in October. You won't see Megan today, but she is the wizard behind the scenes making this all happen. And you will get an opportunity to meet her on Saturday when she is moderating our poetry panel. Thank you, Megan. With these Meridian staffing levels back to normal by early fall, I was able to advance our 20th anniversary celebration planning. Finally, this commemorative event features most of the contributors to our 20th anniversary reader. The reader, which I have here and am proud to share with you, and that you can see a link for at the bottom of your screen, features the most frequently cited, taught, read, and distributed texts published in Meridians between 2000 and 2017. All of the contributors to the reader were invited to participate in this 20th anniversary celebration, and happily, 30 were able to accept. Together, they authored 29 of the 32 texts featured in the reader. Over the next 3 days, this marvelous lineup of internationally renowned women of color scholars, knowledge producers and creative writers will be engaging in conversations about their work, about Meridians, and about the state of intersectionality in the Academy and in the world beyond the ivory tower. We open our celebration this afternoon, Thursday, April 29th, with welcoming remarks by Smith College President Kathleen McCartney. This will be followed by an opening keynote address by former Smith President and Meridians champion, President Ruth Simmons. Following President Simmons' address, we invite you to join us for a founders panel honoring 2 of the 3 Smith College faculty members whose brainchild Meridians was, Professors Emeriti Nancy Saporta Sternbach and Susan Van Dyne. You will have an opportunity to engage with President Simmons and with Professors Van Dyne and Sternbach during the panel Q&A. Our programming on Friday, April 30th and Saturday, May 1st will consist of 12 Meridians panels, each of which will be moderated by our Smith-Duke Editorial Advisory Board members. And each will feature 2 to 3 interlocutors whose texts we feel resonate together in interesting ways. All panels will begin on the hour, starting at 10 a.m. on both days, and will run for 40 minutes of moderated conversation between the panelists and the moderators. This will be followed by 10 minutes of audience Q&A for a total runtime of 50 minutes per panel, and you'll have a 10-minute break before the next one starts. Our final panel on Saturday afternoon features Meridians editors past and present, Kumkum Bhavnani, Mihrian Shansi, Paula Giddings, and myself, and will be moderated by the president of the National Women's Studies Association, Dr. Carsonia Wise Whitehead. We end the event with brief closing remarks from me on Saturday at 4:30. I want to take a moment to note that our celebration was purposely timed to coincide with International Workers' Day weekend, which is celebrated joyously around the world, but sadly much less so in the United States. Thus, I take this opportunity to express Meridian's solidarity with all the workers of the world, but especially those who are women, people of color, ethnic minorities, and laboring in the global South. The ongoing global pandemic has made visible in stark terms the fact that it is these workers' labors that are essential and life-sustaining, whether paid or unpaid. I hope the conversations we have during our event not only exemplify Meridian's longstanding commitment to celebrating women's work, but also contribute in meaningful ways to creating the more socially just world we desire and aspire to in common. Before introducing President McCartney, allow me to give thanks to the many Meridians Project collaborators, both on and off our campus, each of whom contributes invaluable support for the Meridians Project work and vision. So thank you to our funders and sponsors at Smith College, the President's Office, the Provost's Office, the Study of Women in Gender Program, the Project on Women and Social Change, the Office of Institutional Equity and Diversity, the Office of Multicultural Affairs, Africana Studies, Latin American and Latino Studies, the Mwangi Cultural Center, to our Meridian staff, Megan Baptiste, Editorial Assistant, Quigley Fellow, Veronica Kessler, Quigley Fellow, Juliet Schumann Hall, Quigley Fellow, Zora Steedley, Stride Fellow, Kyla Frazier, Consulting Editorial Assistant, Leslie Marie Aguilar. Thank you. To our Smith-Duke Editorial Advisory Board members, Lisa Armstrong, Ibtibstam Boucherine, Mona Hassan, Pinky Hota, Ranjana Khanna, Kimberly Kono, Daphne Lamote, Adrian Lentz-Smith, Lucy Moulet. Thank you. Our Creative Writing Advisory Board members, Floyd Chung, Matt Donovan, Ellen Dore Watson, Andrea Hurston, Daphne Lamote, and Ruth Azeki. Thank you. And finally, to Meridian's 20th anniversary reader contributors and collaborators, cover artist Samantha Tello, whose beautiful artwork graces the cover of the Reader and of today's program. We also want to thank Duke University Press Journals Division, Rob Dilworth, Jocelyn Dawson, Jessica Castro-Rappel, Brooke Philpott, the inimitable Erica Woods, and Heather Hensley. Their work helps to make Meridians as beautiful on the outside as it is on the inside. It is now my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, President Kathleen McCartney, who was the 11th president of Smith College. President McCartney is a summa cum laude graduate of Tufts University, and she earned both her master's and doctoral degrees in psychology from Yale University. She is a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, the National Academy of Education, the American Psychological Association, and the American Psychological Society. She has served as a director of the American Council on Education, the Consortium on Financing Higher Education, and Tufts University, her alma mater. Currently, she serves as the chair of the 5 College Board of Directors. Early in her presidency at Smith College, she has led a strategic planning process that resulted in a bold vision for Smith. The key strategic initiatives include expanding access and affordability, advancing equity and inclusion, enhancing learning spaces, including the new Nielsen Library designed by Maya Lin, launching endowed centers that support the co-curriculum, and addressing the global climate crisis. Most importantly for our purposes today, President McCartney is a generous supporter of the Meridians project, whose extraordinary fundraising efforts, I am sure, will one day soon yield the permanent funding Meridians aspires to. Please join me in welcoming President Kathleen McCartney.
Well, thank you so much, Ginetta, and good afternoon, everyone. It's my great pleasure to join you for this wonderful celebration of the 20th anniversary of Meridians. Like Ginetta, I wish we were together on our beautiful campus, but I'm grateful we can gather virtually via Crowdcast. I've been looking forward to this event for quite some time now. Meridians has been an integral part of the intellectual fabric of Smith since its beginning. I'm incredibly proud that its origins are so deeply interwoven with Smith's mission. Smith is a place where women's education, including women's contributions to scholarship, has mattered for nearly 150 years. As you know, this is important because women have not always had spaces to create scholarship and to share knowledge. Even when women did gain access to those spaces, women of color were often excluded. As a result, their voices were silenced, their ideas cast aside, and their knowledge production was not elevated within academia. For too long, this has left generations of students and scholars unaware of the stories and intellectual contributions of women of color. Meridians has played a critical role in changing this history, and its presence within the academic landscape is needed now as it was 20 years ago. At a conference last year marking the history of Meridians, Ranjana Khanna, director of the Franklin Humanities Institute at Duke University, noted that, and I quote, "Feminism, race, and transnationalism, terms that subtitled the journal, still struggle to be more than subsections of interest, even within gender studies departments." Meridians has a proud history. When Meridians was founded in 2000, it stood alone as a feminist journal by and about women of color. Prior to Meridian's launch, few academic journals were addressing questions related to race, gender, intersectionality, and internationalism in any kind of intentional, consistent, or meaningful way. In recounting the journal's early history, Ginetta Candelario has noted that these issues were being addressed only episodically, occasionally, and at times tokenistically. So the timing was right when 3 Smith professors, Susan Van Dyne, Nancy Saborda Sternbach, and Anne Arnett Ferguson, approached President Ruth Simmons with a proposal to create a publication that would treat the scholarship of women of color with the seriousness it deserved. The journal would be based at Smith, but its focus and reach would be global. Ruth embraced their proposal immediately. She told them that she would find the funds to support their efforts, and we are so grateful that she did. At the time of Meridian's launch, Ruth had this to say about why supporting the journal was important to her. Women of color have many histories, and these histories can be brought into full and useful relief by providing opportunities for these women to speak for themselves. I'm so pleased to have Ruth with us at this celebration. To this day, Meridian's mission remains unique among academic journals to publish cutting-edge scholarship and creative work at the intersection of race, gender, ethnicity, and nation. I love how inclusive and inviting this mission is. It speaks to innovation, it recognizes the interconnectedness of our world, and it elevates and centers not only the intellectual aspirations, but also the artistic contributions of voices that have been marginalized. Meridian's impact is clear. Some of the world's finest scholarship by women of color originated in Meridians. Through the years, articles in Meridians have formed the basis for teaching and learning in the classroom. Conferences have been developed around themes explored in the pages of the journal, and students have had the opportunity to work alongside the journal's editors, thereby gaining valuable experience in academic publishing through their work with some of the most preeminent scholars, artists, and activists from around the world. In 2004, Meridians received the Phoenix Award for Significant Editorial Achievement from the Council of Editors of Learned Journals, and just this year, the Council recognized Meridians once again with its inaugural Best Digital Feature Award. I'm incredibly proud of all that Meridians has accomplished throughout its distinguished history. Even as we celebrate Meridian's past, we look to its future as well. It is my hope that Meridians will continue to chart new courses and push the boundaries of scholarship created by women of color. As importantly, I hope that the voices represented in each issue of Meridians will echo for decades to come. There are so many people who deserve thanks for all they've done to bring us to this day. I want to recognize a few of them now. Kumkum Bhavnani, Meridian's inaugural editor, for establishing a vision that has endured for 2 decades. Miriam Chansey, Meridian's editor from 2002 to 2004, who inaugurated the journal's now established practice of showcasing artwork by women of color on the journal's covers. Author and scholar Paula Giddings for her distinguished contributions as Meridian's longest-serving editor. The members of the Smith-Duke Editorial Advisory Board and the members of the journal's Creative Writing Advisory Board. Duke University Press for their long-standing partnership in publishing Meridians. The remarkable staff who have worked tirelessly throughout the years to ensure the quality and integrity of each issue of Meridians, and especially Professor Ginetta Candelario for her thoughtful and careful stewardship of this beloved journal and the broader Meridians project of supporting the knowledge production of women of color in all its forms. And let us also be grateful to Ginetta for her organization of this event. And now it's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, someone I deeply admire, the 9th president of Smith College, Ruth Simmons. If we were gathered in person on the Smith campus, you would know immediately the legacy of Ruth's leadership. You would see it in the physical manifestations, such as the Simmons wing of our newly reimagined library, and on the steps of our campus center, which are inscribed in her honor. But you would also experience it in the ethos of academic excellence and inclusion that is central to our community today. Meridians had its origins in Ruth's belief in bringing previously marginalized voices into the mainstream of academic life, and it is a testament to her vision that we are celebrating Meridian's 20th anniversary today. At Meridian's founding, Ruth said, "This journal posits that women of color and their concerns need to be, and in fact will be, at the center of the Academy's scholarly research agenda." Ruth Simmons became Smith's College president in 1995, making history as the first African-American woman to lead a major liberal arts college. She dreamed big for Smith and expanded traditional conceptions of liberal arts education. Much of what we celebrate about Smith today comes from her tenure, including the Picker Engineering Program, the first engineering program at a women's college, the Conn Liberal Arts Institute, and the Praxis Internship Funding Program. In 2001, Ruth went on to the presidency of Brown University, making history again as the first African-American president of an Ivy League institution. There, she set a similarly ambitious agenda, implementing need-blind admission, investing in faculty excellence, and creating a process by which the university grappled with its relationship to the transatlantic slave trade. That process and its resulting recommendations continue to set a standard for institutional self-reflection across higher education. Today, Ruth is the much beloved president of Prairie View A&M University, an historically Black land-grant university and the second oldest public college or university in Texas. Just last month, Prairie View launched the Ruth J. Simmons Center for Race and Justice. Through research, scholarly symposium outreach, the Simmons Center will bring its namesake's clarity, ambition, and vision to the project of building a new future for racial justice. And now, please join me in welcoming Ruth J. Simmons.
Kathleen, thank you so much for those generous remarks. And I must say, I hesitate to claim that I'm giving a keynote address. I find that both in terms of what Ginetta offered and what you, Madam President, offered, that you really don't need a keynote. And I will confess that on occasion, when I find myself feeling that a keynote is not necessary, I don't give one. But I won't do that today. But I so appreciate your remarks, as I appreciate greatly the opportunity to be with all of you. To Ginetta and Kathleen and the many scholars who have, together and in great solidarity, made Meridians such a resounding success and an important resource for scholars. I thank you for inviting me to be a part of this 20th anniversary celebration of the founding of this wonderful journal. Sometimes as years pass, we scarcely notice the milestones achieved in efforts initially thought immensely fragile. I can recall so vividly the early days of the Meridians project. There was the question of whether the Academy could accept the premise on which the journal had to be created. Further, there was the question of whether there would be enough interest on the part of scholars to make the project go over a significant span of time, as well as a concern about how the journal might be staffed, funded, and made secure within the college's many worthy priorities. As president of Smith, I didn't really have time to question how supporting such a venture initiated by an African-American president would be seen. Because for the first time in my academic career, I perceived that this project presented itself as an opportunity to address the norms and biases that punished scholars for their research, that dismissed valuable scholarship because of the venue in which it appeared, and that shuttered research careers because scholars could not find a home for their research in publishing houses and journals. I had just come from Princeton University, where as Associate Dean of the Faculty, I had consistently encountered a reluctance by some departments there to assess fairly the quality of the scholarship of minorities and women. The tenure track was just that, one track controlled by senior faculty who sought scholarship and colleagues whose work built upon their own traditions of scholarship. In spite of Jean-Paul Sartre's admonition in Orphée Noire that one should not expect to hear songs of praise from those whose muzzles and shackles have been removed, the Academy was still very much in the mode of expecting work that paid homage to the work of the past. There was little patience with those who critiqued the evident biases in such work, who deemed it insufficiently pertinent to the contemporary period, or who defined their career as advancing new insights and modes of analysis. Young scholars approaching the moment of tenure decision were likely to be turned down by even their closest colleagues for not, quote, making the grade, and for not possessing the needed scholarly trajectory to be granted lifetime tenure as one of their number. A scholarly trajectory so dependent on whether or not their work could find their way into referee publications. Securing approval for the appointment of women and minorities from outside the Academy was no different. I think about the appointment of our dear friend Toni Morrison as a case in point. At the time that the university established the Robert F. Goheen Professor in Creative Writing, Morrison was a faculty member at SUNY Albany. Numerous obstacles stood in the way of her candidacy for this position. First, SUNY Albany was not one of the institutions from which Princeton typically recruited. As one professor told me, this opening up of applications from a variety of institutions was a nuisance, because in the old days, one could simply call up one's chum at Yale and ask for the best young doctoral scholar completing his degree. Well, SUNY Albany was not Yale. And so what did it mean to not only recruit from that institution, but to do so for such a high honor and senior appointment as the Robert F. Goheen Chair? In addition, the question of what type of appointment to offer this African-American writer who wrote about race and gender presented problems. While given her fierce intellect and her prolific writing even to that point, it might have seemed a good idea for a joint appointment between creative writing and English. But the English faculty flatly refused to offer this future Nobel laureate an appointment. The Goheen Committee nevertheless advanced her candidacy, and in a Herculean and wholly memorable way, the president at the time, William Bowen, pushed her appointment through. Imagine that if such an effort to appoint Morrison, one of the most prominent literary figures and critics of the time, would require so much to overturn uninformed and unrecognized academic bias, imagine what most simply well-qualified and promising minorities and women had to face. Such were the times. So when I arrived at Smith, such inequities were uppermost on my mind as I wondered what I could do as an African-American woman president who understood intimately the forces at work in the academy that disadvantaged the work of brilliant women scholars. It seemed to me that the obligation of a women's college was to do more than merely call attention to persistent race and gender inequities, but to imagine new ways of doing justice to the work of these scholars. Peer review was a sine qua non of favorable tenure decisions, and yet many, as I said, peer-reviewed journals and publishers lacked the intellectual knowledge and the intellectual generosity to appreciate the cutting-edge intersectionality of the work of many women scholars, let alone minority women scholars. So when presented with the idea of a peer-reviewed journal that focused on the work of this population of scholars, I was frankly elated. But I have to say that much uncertainty plagued the early days of the journal. Would it be supported by others in the Smith administration? Would it be accepted by so-called mainstream disciplines? Would its quality be strong enough to silence skeptics? The only way to test the appetite for such an effort was to get started. And get started we did. In getting started, we were helped greatly by early adherents who had the foresight to understand the importance of this project. And they joined our founding advisory board. Ama-Ata Aiju, Ray Chow, Marissa Conde, Angela Davis, Paula Giddings. Hi, Paula. I saw you in the chat room. Wilma Mankiller, Nell Painter, and Toni Morrison, among other eminent scholars, helped to launch Meridians as a credible enterprise, lending the prestige of their work and the visibility of their profile to this effort. A diverse group of founding editors, including Ravina Agarwal, Elizabeth Alexander, Ann Ferguson, Ann Jones, Gail Pemberson, Nancy Sternbach, and Susan Van Dyne added further luster to this amazing founding group of writers, activists, and scholars. Finally, the brilliant work of early editors set the proper tone for rigorous, groundbreaking work that would become identified with the journal. From hair to hybridity, from the carceral state to war frenzy, from feminisms to beauty culture, from love politics to reproductive justice. The sweep of topics and the new approaches taken redrew the lines of scholarship, bringing to light and life what animates our thinking in regard to the ways we might better understand race, gender, and transnationalism. And here we are today, having survived 2 decades of uncertain funding, 2 decades of pushing the envelope for this population of scholars, 2 decades of achieving, often in spite of obstacles. So this 20th anniversary must, above all, be a celebration of a spectacular achievement, one that has helped to alter the trajectory of many careers, and more importantly, tackled head-on the entrenched bias that persists even today in our profession. When I was president of Brown, I often wondered why I couldn't be a president just like any other Ivy president. Yes, I was just that naive. As long as discrimination stands in the place of fairness and bias in the stead of discernment, as long as a scholar's potential is thought predetermined by their race, gender, or identity, by where they studied, by the subject of their research, and by their willingness to speak to the reality of oppression, we will not have the luxury of being just another scholar, just another administrator, just another president. This is the work of justice, and we must recognize that it may be the most important and most ennobling work that we can do. I'm immensely proud of the decision we made to make a place for exceptional scholarship. Indeed, I count it as one of the most important decisions that I took as a leader. So I congratulate all of you who have worked so hard to assure the quality of Meridians. I could not be more pleased with the results. Thank you. Again, I want to say how pleased I am to be with you. I congratulate you on this singular achievement. I am so happy to see so many friends who are here. I hope to have a chance to connect with you in the coming days. And again, I want to send my my sincerest best wishes to you, and my hope that you continue to flourish in the important work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth. It's really, your words were very moving and inspirational. Thank you also, Kathleen, for your opening remarks and for introducing Ruth to us. We're going to be moving now to our founders panel. That will mean closing this crowdcast room and being invited to join that one, where President Simmons, Professor Susan Van Dyne, and Professor Nancy Supporter-Sternbach will join us for the founders panel, telling us a bit more about those early years of Meridians. So I'll see you there. Thank you all.